Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another live on the LT World YouTube channel. How are you guys doing out there? And let me know if the audio sounds good. Today, folks, I am going to be reacting to Do All Muslims Think the Same by the channel Jubilee. Jubilee's a pretty big channel. They're almost at 8 million subscribers and stuff. And they have some interesting videos. They have some interesting videos where they do comparative religion or comparative thought, and they do a bunch of stuff like that. And so I think one time before I did a Spectrum video where I reacted to Do All Christians Think the Same, but now today I'm going to do one that Do All Muslims Think the Same. And I want to see how this plays out. I want to see the different thoughts that go on. If you enjoy what you see, leave a like, comment, subscribe. You need to be a subscriber to interact with the live chat, so make sure you do that. But yeah, so I think today's going to be fun. I think it's going to be a fun video. And if there's any Muslims in the chat, if there's any Muslims that are watching this video, maybe you can give me your thoughts on how you would have answered the question if you were the person in the video. Because they're going to go through a series of questions. I'm not sure actually what they are. I didn't actually watch this video at all. So they're going to go through a series of questions, and they're going to see if the Muslims agree or disagree on this video. So yeah, let me know in the live chat if you're a Muslim and how you would have answered these questions. And I'll kind of give you my thoughts along the way as well. So, without further ado here, we'll give it a minute here. It's not quite 7 o'clock, and I did set up this live stream for 7, so we'll give it a minute here, and then we'll jump into the video. But yeah, how's everyone doing today? In the live stream? If you're there, out there listening, tell me how you're doing. So, I think we'll get started here shortly. In about a minute or so. Man. Today it was a crazy day for me. Pretty crazy day. I was all over the place today. But yeah, I think we'll jump right into it now and get started.
Hey, good humans. Welcome to another episode of Spectrum. This is Michael.
Hello.
I'm Ian, and stick around at the end. We're going to talk a little bit with you guys.
Believing men and believing women. Same level.
No, disagree. I have in the court of law, the Quran explicitly states
I'm sorry.
2 female witnesses carry the weight of 1 male, and that's why I stood over there.
It's gonna be interesting. What?
You guys. Like it's honestly it just gets really hard. Like it's just 5 times a day and it's like spread throughout the day. We all live like young professional lives and it gets kind of in the way. And
If I could quantify it, I'm averaging about 3 out of 5 prayers. I think I will find myself in prayer more when I'm in desperation. It's not something that's subjective. I know we should be all praying as a requirement.
I just want to say it takes a lot of guts to be honest and say that. I honestly believe that if you feel it in your heart that you have a strong relationship with God, God will have mercy on you with whatever you're dealing with. So
being on this line doesn't mean it's like a piece of cake
Exactly.
to do the 5 daily prayers. It is a struggle, it's a challenge. I was working in a corporate environment where I could not comfortably find a space, so I'd have to go pray in the car or in the parking lot. So it is a challenge, but yeah.
So I think the idea of praying 5 times a day, I think that would be more difficult in certain areas and less difficult in other areas. So for instance, let's just say you live in a predominantly Islamic community. I would venture to guess that they make it easier on you to do your 5 daily prayers throughout the day. So like it's not quite as burdensome maybe during the workday, or they give you breaks or something. I could imagine them actively trying to accommodate that within how they structure their work versus let's just say in the United States, where generally speaking there's not a lot of Muslims in the United States percentage to the population, and so a lot of corporations, a lot of companies, they don't structure their business in a way that is designed to accommodate for the 5 daily prayers that a Muslim often will try to do or pray and stuff. So I can only imagine that it is more difficult in a more secular area or corporate entity versus in a area or community where it's predominantly expected that people will be praying on a regular basis. Oh, hello, Flower. How are you doing? Welcome to the live stream. How are you doing today? So I think that plays a big part into this discussion. as of location, community and stuff. But also, I think a part of it, as they kind of discussed, is it does definitely seem like something of a dedication. If it's important to you, you'll do it. If it's not important to you, you won't. So it's kind of what you make of it too, I guess, in that regard. But yeah.
Islam promotes violence. 3, 2, 1.
I was going to say, I expect most of them to disagree.
We're not allowed to cut down trees during war. We're not allowed to hurt children and mothers. We're not allowed to hurt our own prisoners. And when people associate terrorism, something so disgusting with Islam, it hurts me because ISIS targets Muslims more than they target anybody else.
That is true.
And in the age of Google, there's no excuse. Like, if you don't know that Islam means peace, Islam means surrender, being a Muslim is one who submits their will to God, how is that violent? Like,
At the end of the day, I feel like media is the one that has that hand and that stronghold causing folks to be that way or think that way.
I guess I literally listened to the prompts, does Islam promote violence? And I'm only speaking not from my personal perspective, but just from trying to understand how discussions about this religion can be used to defame it, to justify terrorism per se. When somebody says, and for the record, kill a non-believer, let's acknowledge that sentence. And if we're going to reach a conclusion and a solution with somebody who does think this way of us and our faith, we need to understand their argument thoroughly.
But
I disagree with what you just said.
Please.
I really do, because I read the Quran every day as a practice. And not once in 2019 have I yet gotten to a verse about violence. All of them about mercy of God, turn to God, God is with you. To me, that's
you
an
denying the
emotional
verses?
connection.
Okay, I understand.
That is an emotional connection to my Creator.
Sure.
And I'm not going to allow anybody to take that away.
I'll take the statement that you
Please.
gave, kill the non-believers. At the time of the Holy Prophet, the Muslims were endangered. They were the
Correct.
minority, right?
That's what I'm saying.
So, but
But-
it doesn't necessarily mean that because we are in danger that whenever there's a non-believer, we kill them. What non-believer refers to are like the Meccans or like the people that were actively going against Muslims and
Right.
trying
Sure.
to harm
Plotting to
us and
kill
stuff.
them.
And I wanted this healthy
Okay.
discourse.
Yes, and
because
I agree with
dwell
you.
upon that other perspective. I didn't grow up proud of those verses because I didn't understand them.
Yeah,
But
and
now that I
several
do have
times-
full understanding, I know that it's important to keep not a one-dimensional perspective, but not even accept the others, but thoroughly understand it.
That's interesting discussion because I think they all have a point as of like as far as the media goes. The media has a incentive to radicalize, take the fringes of a religion and basically say this is the religion. Or news only highlights what's bad in the world, and that's how they get clicks and views, and that's how they get their viewership up. So, like, that's exactly why they will highlight things like terrorism or highlight things like, 9/11 or things like that, because it gets clicks, it gets views, it gets people all riled up, and it makes them money. So, yeah. And it is true, actually, when it comes to the groups like ISIS or these more violent groups, that by what I was aware of and by what I've studied, a lot of times they kill more Muslims than they do any other religion. They kill other Muslims because they disagree with how they perceive their religion or their theology. So that is an interesting discussion. But of course, this discussion always boils down to the context of what you're reading and the context of how it applies. And of course, systematic religion always sort of tries to explain at least things that seem paradoxical or hard to swallow in a sense. What's up, Flower, again? I'm great. How about you? I'm doing great, dude. I'm doing great. Today was a long day, though. I gotta say, today was a long day. The reason why I was kind of only communicating out, didn't get the schedule sooner, is because I worked overtime, man. I worked overtime today, so I only got off work less than an hour ago. But yeah, so I'm doing good. What's up, Mr. Twix? Welcome to the live stream. Welcome. How you doing, Mr. Twix? So yeah, that's always just an interesting question. Interesting discussion, because I think, again, it does boil down to how people try to present things to get clicks and views, and systematic religion always tries to explain things that are difficult within their own religion.
The job should be mandatory. 3, 2, 1.
I have strong feelings. I just feel like it's a woman's right to cover if she wants to. And to tell a woman what to do with her body is totally against our Islamic principles. So
You know, being a guy here, I just made a really conscious decision to be like somewhat agree, because people don't understand that hijab is like a concept, as far as like, it's not just like the actual headscarf. Islam really promotes the idea of modesty, and that's how you get closer to God. And if you feel like having a headscarf is a way for you to get
What
closer
is
to
she
God,
doing?
then so be it.
100% agree with that, because it's not just a headscarf, it's your behavior, it's a personality, it's how you treat your friends and your neighbors. Yeah, for a lot of people, the process is build my courage, my bravery, and my confidence, and then wear the scarf. For me, it was kind of reverse. I started with the scarf because I knew that I was not going to build that bravery unless I started wearing it. Because when you put it on, you start acting different, you start acting nicer, you're kinder, because now you're representing your religion, your faith.
You make me think really deep about that, because I've been struggling. I wore it when I was about 15. I tried it out. But it's been a struggle because internally I want to be a better Muslimah, that I'm going to represent to society before my outer side represents Islam.
So I think this would be different. Okay, this is just me speaking from a Western perspective. I would definitely think this would be a different answer or response if you were in a predominantly traditional religious country, Islamic country. These, to me, I can already tell these are pretty clearly Western thinkers. I mean, Jubilee, I think, is located in California. I think their channel and stuff is located in California. So I can already kind of tell there's a lot of Western influence in the way they're speaking about Islam, the way they're kind of talking about these concepts. Because I definitely have the feeling that if you were in a more traditional religious setting, there would be a lot more people on the agree side of things. Like, it should be more mandatory, it should be expected, because it's an important part of modesty, as that guy was kind of saying. He was talking about modesty. But I'm curious, if anyone's a Muslim in the chat, I would just be interested to get your thoughts on that question. Should it be mandatory? Is it mandatory, or how does that work? Mr. Twix, what do you think about Islam? Is it true or not? Please answer. So, I mean, obviously I'm a Christian, so obviously I believe that Christianity is true, and therefore I don't believe Islam is true. But I'm continually learning about other religions because I'm just always been intrigued. That's why I study things like Hinduism, I study things like Islam, I study things like Christianity, I study things. I'm just interested in other religions and philosophies and continually learning and trying to challenge myself to a certain extent. I will go look for the meaning of mandatory real quick. Mandatory means you must do something. So for instance, let's just say, basically mandatory means it is necessary for you to do it. You have to do it. If you don't do it, that is wrong. That's a problem. So yeah, mandatory just means you have to do something. So in this case, basically the question would be, let's just say in this scenario, I'm expecting, you would say, does government have the right to make it that you have to wear the hijab? Does a Islamic community have the right to say you have to wear the hijab? That's kind of the question at hand here. And most of the people said no, it's not. Again, the way they answered it though sounds like an American response. It sounds like, well, I have freedom as a woman. I have freedom to make the decision I want to make. So it sounded very Western in how they answered it. And that's why I kind of expected. I suspect that it wouldn't be, I suspect that if it was a different country or a different region, you would have a different response there. It's like, so I will go back to me. It's like force, like by people. No, it's more like, would you obey God or not? Yeah. So, I mean, it depends on I guess, yeah. So if you're talking from a government standpoint, mandatory would mean the government demands you to wear it and will enforce it. Yeah, that would mean that from a government standpoint, that's what mandatory pretty much means. From a religious standpoint, you could say that, do you need to wear the hijab to honor God? Is that necessary? Can you still be a good Muslim without wearing hijab as a woman? So that would be also another way to ask that question. Can you still be a good Muslim woman and not wear the hijab? Or is it mandatory for you to wear the hijab to be a good Muslim woman? That would be another way to word it. Escaping the governmental societal law side of things. It's like okay, thanks you, good luck. Would you trust the wisdom of God or not? For me, I didn't wear it until age of 19. It was my choice, 100%, and I love it. Hey, there you go. But so wait, you said I didn't wear it until the age of 19. It was my choice, 100%, and I love it. There you go. Awesome. Actually, interestingly enough, so I grew up in the background I grew up in would be considered Mennonite Anabaptist. And we don't have the hijab within my community, but something we do have within my community is what you call a head covering. So basically, in my community, it was very modesty was very important where I grew up. And so women would basically wear their hair up and wear a covering over their head. And they would also often wear skirts or plain dresses, not to draw attention to themselves. So that was kind of my background. So like actually this conversation about modesty, this conversation about the hijab actually can resonate with me because my background was very traditional and modest growing up, how the women dressed and approached life. But yeah, that's always interesting conversation because, you know, that's the way people view it. So yeah, so let's move into the next question.
I face discrimination for my religion. 3, 2, 1.
Though I'm not a traditional Muslim female, I don't wear the scarf. When I was younger, I'd be walking home from the masjid with my mom. She wears the hijab. This was before September 11th even happening. She would get teenagers in cars driving by, spitting on us, cursing at us. She would always say, just brush it off.
When you show that you're a Muslim in any way, people kind of, like, you get those glances every so often. But what happened was that after, like, all this, like, election things happened, it's funny, people who you grew up with, people who you knew your entire lives are kind of looking at you a little differently. You know, so that kind of threw me off a little bit. I was like, wait a second, like, you know me. I didn't think this would be an issue, you know?
I personally have not experienced explicit discrimination. I conveniently can shave my beard and try to compensate almost, and it's sad to admit, but I know it's not my job to create a comfort space for another person. However, I would say that if you do guys confront it explicitly, try to think of it as an opportunity to teach as opposed to reacting with emotion.
I think it also depends on what the encounter is. Like I had a beer bottle thrown at me after 9/11. I'm not going to go confront that person and be like, hey, let's build bridges.
Yeah, don't do that.
But if there's someone who's got a little bit of an attitude or, you know, misconception, I'll work on that.
So again, I can tell this is from the Western United States. Obviously, all these people from the United States. Because if you would live in another country that is predominantly Muslim, you're not going to face discrimination for being a Muslim. That's actually going to be expected of you to be a Muslim. So like, you know, Indonesia or, I don't know, the Middle East or whatever, like where countries where people are predominantly Muslim, it's going to be, it's going to be more culturally acceptable and therefore not really much discrimination. There might be infighting among the Muslim community. I'm not sure. It depends where you're at, I guess, and what groups are there. But as far as being a Muslim in general, it wouldn't pose a problem. But in the United States, it can be different because there's a lot more. The United States is very diverse. Like, I don't know if for anyone who hasn't ever been to the United States, if in the live stream or watching this video, the United States is extremely diverse. There's a lot of different ethnicities, a lot of different religions, a lot of different people from all sorts of backgrounds, which comes with a mixed bag. It comes with some good things, comes with some bad things. It can create an interesting world, but also it can create problems. And one of the problems can be discrimination, people being at each other because they disagree on things. Which I think we should be able. That's part of why I want to make this chance because so people can disagree in a way that's not evil, not bad. That we can disagree in a way that's helpful or cooperative or something. But yeah, so that's definitely coming from a United States standpoint. At least when it was interesting because within like my community growing up, I wasn't around too many people who thought differently than me. Because as a kid, you're with your parents, you're with who they hang around, and they can, and I tended to be within a similar thinking community. It was only after I went to college and stuff and started going around that I started meeting people from a lot of different backgrounds, and that kind of opened my eyes to different perspectives, different worlds, and you come to learn that yes, everyone has different perspectives on life, everyone has these different things, and they are very important. Don't get me wrong, they're extremely important. What is true about God and what's true about religion, what's true about these things, have eternal consequences, so we consider them importantly. But you start to learn that people are people at the end of the day. We're all made by God. We're all made to honor God. And so we ought to show love and compassion and mercy to each other as we try to learn more about God and trying to pursue truth. And at the end of the day, we must pray to God and pray for his wisdom and leadership and show each other mercy as we pursue. But yeah, so that's always just, I can tell this again, you can tell this from the United States based on how these people are answering these questions and based on these perspectives. And I think also my generation, in aspect to the 9/11 thing, my generation is so distant from the 9/11 thing that it no longer has an emotional response, emotional attachment to us, because I'm just so young, I'm just so detached from it. But that used to be a big conversation. It's not really much one anymore. Mary, Mother Jesus have also hijab or not? I mean, so you're asking if the Mary, mother of Jesus, wore hijab or not. Is that what you're asking? I'm assuming that's what you're asking. I mean, based on Jewish culture, I expect she wore some sort of headscarf or head covering, because Jewish women throughout the Old Testament, Jewish women throughout Judaic history wore head coverings and wore stuff. Now, within rabbinical modern day Judaism, it's not the same. Rabbinical Judaism now is not the same Judaism that was thousands of years ago. So, but traditional Judaism, from historical record and by what we can best tell, women wore headscarves, which may have been similar to the hijab, which may have been a bit different. I'm not sure, but it wouldn't be shocking if Mary wore something similar to a hijab or wore something like that to a certain extent. I wouldn't know the details about that, but I would understand Jewish culture wore headscarves for a while there. I see in this case it's not mandatory, but modesty is a must. You don't walk around in I'm assuming he meant to say bikini, not pinkini. I'm assuming he meant bikini, which is the swimwear, the two-piece swimwear. In Islam, we all sin, but going out in public and proudly sin is much worse. Yeah, that's it. Again, that is a concept as like a Christian I fully agree with. There's this idea that everyone is a sinner. Everyone has sinned. Everyone falls short of the glory of God. Everyone does that. But to actually live in that sin, so like you can't be a true Christian. In my eyes, you can't be a true Christian and say, oh, I love God, but then continually live in sin and love sin and live in it. You actually need to be repentant of your sin. You need to be sorry for your sin, and you're continually growing in godliness in that way. And so yeah, the issue with I guess when it comes to the Western perspective, a lot of times why there's this debate about modesty, it boils down to the question of, well, I should have my freedom to do what I want. You have freedom, but the question then boils down to what extent do you allow for that freedom and stuff like that. It's like the public has its own rights on you, so there's no such thing like I do whatever I want. That's for your private life. That is true. Like, again, the public life is different than your private life. But I would even argue that your private life impacts public life. I mean, what I do in private impacts who I am. It impacts how I think. It impacts how I behave. And it will impact how I treat other people in public. And so we make this division between public life and private life, when in reality, private life impacts public life. What I feed myself in private, I will regurgitate in public. Like whatever I feed myself internally, whatever I read, whatever I consume will impact how I behave. And how I behave impacts the public. I think we should have less of a distinction between private and public life than we do. There is a distinction, there is a difference, but at the same time, what you do in private will impact the public. And we should always keep that in mind. Anyway, moving on to the next question here.
Women are equal to men. 3, 2, 1.
I'm gonna somewhat change mine.
Wow.
I had to think.
It's going to be an interesting one.
So the reason I sit on agree and not strongly agree is that my understanding of human beings is that that women and men in general have different roles. You know, men cannot bear children, women do. In Islam, there's no discriminatory thing. There's nothing that a man can do that a woman cannot.
And I don't have to prove otherwise except to cite in the Quran when Allah addresses us, believing men and believing women. Same level.
No, disagree.
I read the Quran.
Verbatim.
So you can't tell me.
This, in the court of law, the
no.
Quran explicitly states
I'm sorry.
2 female witnesses carry the weight of
sorry.
1 male. And
I'm
that's why I stood
sorry.
over there. I personally feel, and if it were up to me, it would be 50-50. There is no discrimination on my personal bias, but
why are you standing there?
I'm acknowledging that the Quran prescribes something here, right?
No.
In Islam, we do get equal opportunities. Scientifically, no, we're not equal.
May I ask
Because
a question
men
to the room?
can do things physically that we can't do.
May I ask a question to the
Women
room?
can do things that men can't do. So my question would be, what aspect are we
Sure.
discussing?
If personal belief versus Islamic belief versus societal belief, that's 3 different things. If I'm saying personally, I believe women can be greater than men. I believe women have...
Islam says that.
However, can we acknowledge one thing?
Islam promotes that completely, yeah.
I'm not well educated enough in the Quran to make really any sort of statement about the topic. I just find this whole discussion kind of funny because this discussion is like it's the Western Islamic discussion about feminism, basically. At the end of the day, that's what it is. This is talking about feminism. This is talking about women's equal rights, and this is talking about these type of things. I'm not well educated enough in the Quran to talk about what this says about women and what it says not about women. I've read it one time. I read the Quran one time, and you don't read something one time and memorize and remember everything. I've only read some of the hadith. I don't know enough to really speak deeply into this topic. If anyone in the comment section want to tell me what they think about this topic, let me know. So the funny thing is that they're right in the sense of scientifically, men and women are different. I mean, at the end of the day, men are biologically different than women. That's just a fact. Women can bear children, men can't. Like there are distinctions there from a scientific level. From a societal level, does God make distinctions about rules, gender rules? Does God make distinctions about gender rules between men and women? Within the Quran, when I read it, I did get an idea that there's gender rules. There was definitely different prescriptions for women and men. So, for instance, modesty for women. There was an emphasis of modesty for both men and women, but there was definitely, it seemed to me, and when I read it, an increased emphasis for modesty towards women because biologically speaking, and I mean, just speaking from general experience and things like that, men tend to be more visual when it comes to sexual things and stuff like that. So modesty for women tends to be more important than it is necessarily for men because women aren't as easily triggered in that way. So like that whole discussion from a gender roles perspective, I got the inclination that there were some gender rules. To what extent they are, I will let Muslim scholars debate that out among themselves. I do find that funny though that she says, I've read the Quran so you can't tell me what it means. That comes from a very arrogant attitude to me because as someone who read the Bible multiple times, I read the Bible a lot as a Christian. I've read the Bible multiple times through. I don't go up to someone and tell them, oh, I've read the Bible, so you can't tell me what it means. Like, okay, if someone has never read the Bible and then they try to teach me about what the Bible teaches, I do take that a little bit like, okay, calm down. If you haven't read the Bible, don't try to tell me what the Bible says. But if someone else has equally read the Bible like I have, and we both have read the Bible a lot, and we're going to have a discussion about the Bible, I don't tell that person, oh, I read the Bible, you can't tell me what to think. Because we might need to have a thoughtful discussion about topics. Like, that's the whole point of systematic religion. The whole point of religion is to talk about the texts or the words of God that have been come down to us, and what does that mean for us at a practical basis. And the same thing I see with when I listen to Muslim scholars talk about the Quran stuff. There are differences in theology, or differences in interpretation, or differences in practices, because they're discussing how to understand difficult parts of the Quran, difficult parts of the Hadith tradition, difficult parts of the Islamic tradition. So that just comes across me as very arrogant. That comes across me as just not wise. You should be willing to hear people out, and you shouldn't just say, well, because I have my own perceptions and readings that I know exactly what I 100% know what I know. It just comes across very arrogant to me. I don't know. It is indeed funny to me. It is indeed funny to me. It just, I don't know. It struck me as a pretty foolish discussion. That's all I'm going to say. Oh boy, you can be Muslim and part of the LGBT community. I can already tell you, I'm going to make a prediction. There's going to be a 50-50 split on this probably because their Western Islamic tradition is a lot more Westernized. I'm going to make a prediction. I could be wrong, but we'll see. This is going to be interesting. Oh, boy. Oh, my word.
Such a broad question.
Oh, my word.
Just to be on the safe side.
I'm a contradictory human being. I pray with one hand and commit sin with the other. So I'm not in a position to be able to tell somebody that they're excluded from a whole faith if perhaps their faith in God is stronger than mine.
Okay, so you can be anything and be a Muslim, but I guess the reason I'm standing here is because Islam is a lot about the progression of the human race and about what is natural and what is not. Islam doesn't necessarily support like the lifestyle of the LGBT community. However, they do support them as human beings, and that is something like it's something that I've struggled with because. They have my 100% love and support. I take a bullet for anybody. I don't care what their sexual orientation is. My best friend, he's gay, and we've had these conversations before, and he's told me that, you know what, Husna, I love you for you. I love you for everything that we've been through together. I don't care what it is that you stand for, and that's, it's really comforting to know that you don't have to support a lifestyle to support a human being, to love a human being, and to love people unconditionally.
I love what you said. Yeah, and that's why I'm here, because the prompt was, can you be LGBTQ and Muslim? And yes, you can be anything and Muslim. If we're going to get into the logistics of lifestyle practices and the core of scripture, yes, there are different lifestyles or things that are asked for in scripture, but there's nothing that says they are not welcome in the faith. They are not welcome in our houses of worship. They cannot pray. They cannot stand beside us. They don't fast. They are people.
It's very hard, I would say, to be a Muslim and, part of the community.
I agree with you. Beautiful statement.
So okay, they took that. Okay, I will say, the people who were on the agree side did give a different response than I expected. Now they didn't give a lot of response actually. Mostly the person on the disagree side was the one talking. So you didn't get to hear everyone's thoughts, which I would be curious to see if they all agreed on that premise. So they did give a different response than I expected. I expected it to get very much like it's perfectly okay to be these things and be like completely pro. Okay, so they did. I will give them credit. They did respond differently than I expected. I do find it interesting. So as far as if you're going to say, I guess if you would be in like an Eastern traditional Islamic country position, I'm sure that answer would have been completely different. I'm sure that would be a very different response. I'm fairly certain. Because I would assume you could say that everyone has temptation. So let's just say someone's tempted towards homosexuality or to gay love or whatever. People are tempted to different things. Being tempted by something doesn't mean you're sinning. Being tempted by something doesn't mean you're living out that lifestyle. So you could, in theory, be tempted and still be living within a religion that is saying no, homosexuality is sinful, and just not act upon your temptation. You could have feelings of gender dysphoria or feelings of like, you don't quite fit in with society or whatever, and still be in a religion that says that type of lifestyle is sinful because you're not actually living out that lifestyle. By how they made it sound, they made it sound like that is the way they were approaching it, which I don't disagree with. Now, I have a feeling, I still have a feeling that they're probably a little bit more lenient than, again, I would assume they're more lenient than someone in a traditional Muslim country would be. But I could be wrong about that. Any thoughts in there in the chat? What we are equal in the eye of God, but each has its own rule. Yeah, that's what I figured. That's what I figured you would say. There's a difference between the urges and acting upon those urges. Yeah, that's basically what it boils down to. Is you may have the urge or temptation to do something. The question is whether or not you're going to act upon it. If the question is, can you be actively practicing LGBT stuff and be a Muslim? The answer would be no, because by what I understand about Islamic theology, that's not acceptable. But if the question is, do you have feelings towards these things, then but yes, still be a Muslim. Yes, you could by what I understand about Islamic theology, you could have a feeling about this, but not act upon it, and that's a different scenario. But yeah, so they did respond differently. To their credit, they did respond differently than I expected.
I am American. 3, 2,
Oh boy.
1.
I swear I'm not trying to make this controversial, but I somewhat disagree because I'm first Afghan. Then I would say
she's from
I'm
Afghanistan.
American.
Interesting.
So I do identify as Syrian first. And so what is America? So for me, that identity, because I grew up not feeling like a minority. And I was always proud American. I didn't talk about my Syrian heritage. I wasn't familiar with it. And then the last decade, it was like, whoa, I kind of whitewashed my history to be the proud American, to fit in. And everyone was like, if you took off your scarf, you'd be just another white girl. It's just, there's a battle. Like, I'm proud American, but it's like, what does American mean right now?
Yeah.
With everything that's happening.
As a Muslim who just happens to be black in America, I've never not known this to be my country, because that's what this country was founded on.
That's my
being
heritage.
able to be who you are, having the freedom to be that and not feel persecuted. And so, yeah, that's how I live my life, and I'm not going to let anybody force me or talk me into thinking differently.
So who wants to have coffee and continue this?
All right, so let me see if there's anything else.
Let's go to Starbucks.
I love how you always bring up another side to it. It's great. It's great.
So I have a question for you. You've directed every single episode of Spectrum. How do you go about finding out like what prompts to ask. Yeah, how do you do that justice?
A lot of research goes into these episodes. We try to meet with people from the group to help us come up with the prompts. We also ask you for some prompts.
The way to do that is you follow us on
So yeah, that was interesting. So the I am American question at the end, I was kind of curious to see how they would answer. I mean, they gave the sort of patriotic best scenario response where it's like, well, we have freedom to do what we have freedom to practice our religion here, and that's what matters. Like at the end of the day, they emphasize the idea of freedom, and that's why they identify with America, which I think ideally that's what Americans like to think of themselves, like, oh, we're the nation of the free. You can do it. You can practice what you want without persecution. You can debate. You can do what you want without persecution. I guess that would be the ideal in the American mind. So anyway, it's just interesting to see that discussion there at the end. If they act upon it, they would be sinning Muslims. Simple, but it goes to the idea of the public right on you. Don't walk proudly sinning while knowing that you are sinning. It's arrogance. Yeah. And it's like you are directly challenging God. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's basically like, yeah, you're going against what God says. If you're gonna live in sin, you're just going against what God tells you to do. And also the thing within the United States, there's this it's common for people to claim they're a part of a religion and then not follow most of its core tenets, which always bothered me. I'm like, okay, yes, you live in America. It's a free country. You can practice whatever religion you want to practice and stuff like that. But if you disagree with most of the core tenets of a religion and you don't want to practice them, then don't identify with that religion. I always hate it when people identify with the religion and then don't practice any of it. Like just don't claim yourself to be part of that religion. If you don't agree with most of the tenets, then don't be a part of it at all. It's something very common in the West, and it's just always bothered me. I'm like, if you don't agree with the tenets of this religion, then don't practice it. Don't claim to be a part of it. Make your own religion, or call it something else. Separate yourself from the group, but don't try to say you are part of this religion when you don't actually practice it. Anyway, LOL, you guys are funny. What's up, Chuckabug? How you doing, man? How are you doing? What did you get done today? Alif, what's up, man? I don't know. Were you at the last live stream? I can't remember if you were at the last live stream. You might have been. How you doing, brother? So yeah, that was interesting to me because again, it's just, I guess within the West, Islam is, I think, perceived a lot differently in the West than it is in other countries. Within the West, the Muslims I've talked in the West, they strike me to have a different perception than like Muslims in the East or Muslims that from another country do, because the whole thing about culture, when cultures intermingle, they assimilate belief systems, they assimilate how they think, they assimilate what they do, and beliefs mold to culture. So when a Muslim goes to another culture, there's this tendency over time, especially for the next generation, to start adopting the other culture's beliefs, or at least assimilating them into their beliefs somehow. Like, it's just a common thing that happens throughout history. Cultures affect how people perceive their beliefs and perceive their religion. I missed your last live. Sorry, brother. How are you? I'm doing good, man. And that's fine. I was trying to remember. I was like, man, was Alif at my last live stream? I couldn't remember. But yeah, I'm doing good. It was just a long day at work, and I only got back from work like an hour ago. So then I jumped right into this. But yeah, so Jubilee I've always enjoyed Jubilee. Oh, what's this? No, I did that one before. Do all women think the same? Oh, they have the same woman from there. Interesting. Oh, Islam Explained. We could learn about what Islam is. 6 Muslims versus 1 secret non-Muslim. Interesting. But yeah. Was there anything? I think I still have about half an hour I could go. If there's any other videos you'd be interested in me reacting to, or any conversations or discussions you would like, the door of repentance is always open. So maybe one day you may repent on what you did in private, but how about if your actions affected somebody else already? That's why I separate public and privacy. The door of repentance is always open, so maybe one day you may repent on what you did in private, but how about if your actions affected somebody else already? That's why I separate public and privacy. Yeah. I think I know what you're trying to say. I think so. It's a little bit It seems a little bit convoluted to me. But yeah, so it's true that whatever you do in private, people may not know. And, if you sin in private, God knows that you're sinning. And that will be made known at the end of times. And what you do in public, though, impacts people directly. I understand why, to a certain extent, there's a distinction between private and public. I just think the distinction isn't as great as people make it out to be, or they try to pretend that they can do anything in private and it won't impact the public life. But I think at the end of the day, it does. Because what is the public? The public is a bunch of people. The public is people. And the public is a bunch of individuals who do things in private, going to the public, impacting other people. So the public is just a culmination of private people. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it boils down to. React to the Message 1976. Is it just called the Message 1976? When identifying with someone you don't believe in, do you think they like the benefits but don't want to deal with the responsibility? When identifying with something you don't believe in, do you think they like the benefits but don't want to do? Yes. So I think in general, when it comes down to it, why do people claim to be a part of religions that they don't actually practice, or why do people claim to be part of a belief system that they don't actually, follow? I think it does boil down to the fact that they like the idea of having a belief system. And what do I mean by that? So, like, a lot of people want to feel like they have purpose in life. As much as, you have militant atheists out there who really hate the concept of God and religion and all that stuff, but a lot of people out there, they don't like the dogmatic structures of religion. They don't like rules. They don't like laws. They don't like the idea that a higher being gets to tell them what to do. A lot of people don't like that because, humans have this tendency to want to rebel and do what they want to do. But at the same time, religion gives people purpose. It gives people meaning. It gives people hope of an afterlife. It gives people some sort of sense of, care and love and meaning to life. And so religion is like a mixed bag to some people. It's like, well, it has some good because, it gives me something. It satisfies my cravings for something more than just this world. But at the same time, it comes with a bunch of rules and regulations. I don't like that. And so it's a mixed bag to people. And so people, I think, identify with a religion because they're like, oh, I know this religion. I know of it. And I can pick and choose what I want. And after they pick and choose for a while, they're like, oh, I kind of like the religion I made. I'll still identify with this group because it's easier that way and because that's how I first got into my own understanding of my religion. And there's always a subsector for you to identify with. And so, like, I'll identify with this religion. I'll get all the benefits I want out of it, and then I'll take out all the negatives I don't want. I think that's why people do that, because it's kind of hopeless to be an atheist. It's hopeless. It's degrading to be an atheist. And so a lot of people choose to get the best out of religion while ignoring all the responsibility. So yeah, I think that's a big part of it when it comes down to that. I don't know you, Leaf, but I'm used to you here, so I'm glad we have a community going on here. Like, I don't think anyone identifies with any religion or organization that doesn't give a promise of good fortune. That is true. Honestly, facts. Now, the only I think that's facts up to like 1%, not even 1%, like less than 1% of the population, because you do have people who are what's that called? I forget what the term is now, but there are people who literally believe like the world is on a death spiral and there's nothing you can do. We're all going to hell, and stuff like that. So there are people who believe very destructive belief systems, and they think everything's hopeless and pathetic and it's all meaningless. And, God is real, but he hates everyone. He's going to curse everyone. Like, there are people who believe that type of stuff. Granted, most of those people are kind of psychologically unstable. They tend to be kind of, out there. And they tend to live like atheists anyway at the end of the day. They tend to live out these sort of strange, atheistic, sometimes mystical lifestyles. But, yeah, I think at the end of the day, most people just identify with religion because it has benefits. If it doesn't have benefits, what's the point? I mean, that's kind of partially why I'm not an atheist even, is because, one, I think God does exist. I have reason to believe God exists. But beyond that, I have no reason to be an atheist. If atheism is true, whatever, it doesn't make a difference. At the end of the day, if atheism is true and I die and nothing happens, okay, whatever. I guess it doesn't make a difference. But yeah, I think you're right. Like, most people identify with religion because it gives them benefits. It makes them feel better, at least, to a certain extent. I'm not saying it's okay to do whatever you want in private, but at least if you can't avoid that sin, at least do it in private. Yeah, I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. Like, no one should ever sin. Like, it's never justified to sin. And God knows what you're doing at all times. So God knows when you're sinning and when you're not sinning. He's going to bring to justice all things at the end times because he knows what you're doing. So yeah, I agree with you. I know what you're saying. It's better just to not hurt other people or make your sin known to other people in that regard by impacting them. If you're going to do something bad, do it to yourself. Basically, I understand what you're saying from that standpoint. I think just that people tend to think, well, if I do something to myself, I don't impact other people, which isn't true. You impact other people by impacting yourself, in an indirect way. Isn't that how T. Jefferson read the Bible? You mean Thomas Jefferson? You mean the Thomas Jefferson Bible that he made? I don't know the history of that Bible, to be honest with you. But by what I understand, he did kind of just pick pieces of it that he liked and didn't like and kind of made his own Bible. But I don't know enough about it to say anything certain. Sadist. Yes, it was a sadist. That's the word I was looking for. I would advise to having a discussion with the Muslim metaphysician because he has a fair view of Trinity and would be interesting what you think about it. Maybe we'll see. Maybe one day I'll have a discussion. I want to someday have a couple people. I've reached out to a few people over email and stuff, and they never got back to me. That's part of the YouTube world. I would love to do more interviews and stuff if people got back to me, but people don't always get back to me. It's just how this works. It's how the business works. But as you grow and people know you more and you do these things more, people eventually become comfortable with you, and you start making more connections. But yeah, and people ask me like, why don't you do a debate? Why don't you do debate? It's because I don't enjoy debating. I actually don't enjoy debate. Whenever I make a video that's somewhat controversial, I don't actually tend to enjoy it. It's just not. I just don't typically enjoy that type of stuff. Also, I don't really enjoy I listen to debates every once in a while, but I don't really enjoy listening to debates either because they happen to be, a lot of it's rhetoric. A lot of it's just people say like, my opponent's dumb, and they'll give you quick facts, and you're like, well, I don't know if those facts are true or not. I would have to look them up. Anyway, but no, that would be interesting to have a discussion sometime. I would definitely have to reach out to someone though, and they would have to respond back to me and stuff like that. So we'll see. Yesterday I watched a short video on YouTube. A girl do a live stream, and she said just because she doesn't believe in God doesn't mean she's not Muslim. And the guess is like, yeah, that would be a bit strange. But interestingly enough, like within certain religions, actually, that's not uncommon. So, for instance, Judaism. There's a lot of people who identify as Jewish but don't believe in God. There's a lot of people who identify as Hindu but don't believe in God. Like there are religions that happens because basically what they're saying is I identify with the philosophy. I just don't identify with the literal interpretation. So a lot of people say, well, I live my life like a Muslim. I live my life like a Christian. I live my life like a whatever. I just don't believe that God literally exists. I just don't believe that spiritual beings actually live out there. I just don't believe in the literal translation, the literal understanding of these religions. I just live out a lifestyle that reflects and looks similar to these religions because I think their lifestyle is what's best for society to thrive and for my own personal life. That's what they normally mean by that. But yeah, at the end of the day, it doesn't really make sense. The only reason why the core tenets of any religion make sense is because of the premises, which is the premise God exists. At the end of the day. But Iraq to Quran, Sarah Kate the K by Sheikh Muslim, like 69 is a kind of hot take that seems to encourage making wearily and connections, but emphasizes one must maintain innocence. Oh, Luke 16:9. I was like 16. Luke 16:9 is a kind of hot take that seems to encourage making wearily connection, but emphasizes one must maintain innocence. I don't know Luke 16:9 off the top of my head, so I'm not entirely sure what you're referencing to or what you're making a comment about. You can join their live stream. They welcome all Christians and atheists. Oh, interesting. Maybe sometime I'll have to try that out sometime. Debates are nowadays used to fill egos, but having a genuine discussion is rare. Yeah, that's a big... Actually, so have you ever watched... Have you ever watched a debate between like these new atheists and like a Christian or a Muslim or something like that? Like Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins, those type of people. Whenever I have listened to a few of those debates, a couple of those debates, and I listen to them, and I'm just like, oh my word. Half the time I'm like what are you guys are just like throwing haymakers at each other, but not actually saying anything logical. A lot of times it's just emotional arguments. Like I don't like that. It's just a lot of emotional stuff, and I'm just like, all right, calm down. I don't know, but yeah, genuine discussion nowadays on the internet is very rare because the problem is what gets clicks, what gets views. What gets views and clicks is is tension. People find fighting fun. People find fighting and, hot-headed people funny. And they find it entertaining. It gets clicks, gets views, generates money for people. It's a whole problem. And that's the thing. The internet is such a great tool, but it's so abused. Debates are biased, but conversations are interesting. Are you from Texas, brother? I am not from Texas, my dude. I am not from Texas. I'm not from Texas. I've never been to Texas either. I've always been interested to visit Texas, but I've never been to Texas. And I agree. Debates are very biased. The one problem with a debate is that you can't ever admit that you don't know something. You can, but everyone's going to be like, "Oh, you're an idiot," and you're wrong. Just because someone loses a debate doesn't mean their position is actually wrong. It just means they don't know how to defend their position. Now, you could say that if a lot of people within a certain belief system don't know how to defend their system or don't make good arguments, you could probably say there's a good possibility that it's just because their belief system doesn't make sense. But just because someone loses a debate, or just because someone says, "I don't know," doesn't mean that the other person's now correct, or doesn't mean that the other person has a right argument. And again, debates are so short. Debates are normally an hour long, maybe. And you can't discuss thousands worth of philosophy and history in just an hour. I don't know. Anyway, I could go on about this. I just find it interesting. Chuckabug, I hate Texas. What are you saying? What are you talking about? Did you say, is it I hate Texas? Or I don't know what you're trying to say, Chug. Oh my word, I don't know how to read that. Apparently I'm not up with the lingo, man. I don't know. I don't know what the lingo is these days. That's the whole concept of atheism. When you research and dig more about whether it's rational position, you'll find a subjective reason why there are atheists. Being agnostic is fair, though. Yeah, I understand. So I understand the position from atheism, and predominantly the thing about atheism is that it's hyper skepticism. Agnosticism, you can say it is. So how do I want to word this? So a lot of atheist arguments boil back to the fact that they say, well, you can't prove beyond a shadow of doubt that God exists, and if God exists, he would make himself obvious. That's generally what all the arguments boil down to. And then they'll use reasoning trying to defend that position. So, for instance, a lot of atheists, in the naturalist camp, will say, brain or neurology can explain consciousness. Evolution can explain morality. And they'll try to get physical concepts to explain metaphysical concepts. But then when push to shove, they can't tell you how metaphysical concepts actually came to be. They can just tell you about the relationship between the metaphysical and the physical, that there is a relationship there, but they can't tell you how that relationship exists or why it exists. It just goes in circles from there. Atheism is just the idea that, well, you can't prove beyond a shadow of doubt that God exists. There's always going to be questions and skepticism, so therefore I'm not going to believe. While agnostic at least can say, well, you may not know for sure if God exists, but I also don't know for sure he doesn't exist. So, you can always live in that skepticism. I just never understood why, because I don't understand the reason why you would live if you want to live that type of skeptical lifestyle, you could honestly live that way for everything. You could be like, I don't know if I exist. I don't know if the world exists. I don't know if anything exists, because this could all be the Matrix. You could always live like that. You could always live like that. At the end of the day, you have to trust your senses. You have to trust your reasoning. You have to trust what's before you, and make your best rational understanding of what the world is. And so, yeah, that's just generally, I just never understood the hyper skepticism, and I never understood atheism for those reasons. And again, if I'm wrong about atheism, if I'm wrong about that, it doesn't make a difference to me. I don't care, because it doesn't impact how I end or what happens afterwards. Thoughts on should debates be done without a crowd? Aren't some debates done without a crowd technically? I guess if you consider a YouTube audience. If you consider a YouTube audience a crowd, then yes, pretty much every debate's done with a crowd. Technically speaking, not all debates are done with a live audience. Some are. If you go on a podcast, there's debate podcasts and stuff. But you're right, all of them do involve an audience. But I guess I guess you would have debates that aren't in front of an audience. Have you ever debated with someone in your private life, over lunch, over dinner, at home? I have, multiple times. I have debated people in private. And actually, I enjoy thoughtful discussions and debates, if you want to call them that, but thoughtful discussions between people I know, because I know there's a mutual respect. If I know there's a mutual respect there, then I can have a good conversation. But if you go into a conversation and you recognize that there's not a mutual respect, then that's a problem. But yeah, that's why if one day you were feeling super, super good, please do a long live stream reacting to one of those conversations between Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. So I have, one of these days, I thought about doing like a 3-hour long live stream and just boom. But I would have to know that you guys would be available those days. You know, I would have to know that people would be interested in that. I've also thought about doing one where I'm like, all right, I have 2 hours. Give me the videos you want me to watch, and I'll watch them. So yeah, I would love to do that someday. Actually, I'm thinking about doing that maybe like a Saturday or something, where I have like a day off of work. The problem is I work. I work a lot. So like I do YouTube and I work full time, and I have other things outside of work and YouTube that I do with my life. So like, it's just a lot. But if I ever have a day off on a Saturday and I have nothing else to do, I would love to do a long live stream and just listen to a discussion and kind of give my thoughts and my input, get your guys' thoughts. Yeah, I would. I'm thinking about doing that sometime. It's just that I have to get a day off of work. I wish I could do this more. I wish I could spend more time doing this. I can only do so much. But I appreciate you guys for sticking with me. I appreciate having this conversation. Honestly, this is just so relaxing for me just to do this at the end of this video here, just having good, thoughtful conversations. But yeah, so I would totally love to do that sometime. It's all about time for me. Like I have limited time. But maybe one day I'll be able to do this more often. Maybe one day I'll have all the time in the world. We'll see. But yeah, they are warning. They are over an hour, but it's still interesting. I know. I saw one. So like right here, actually, here's one of them. It's over an hour. Islam, Judaism, and Christianity, a conversation. That was the one I was looking at. Someone suggested this one to me. And I watched parts of it because I wanted to see like how did the conversation go. What did the Muslims, Christians, and stuff? Because there's diversity within every religion. But yeah, one day I might watch this whole thing and just go through it with you guys. It would be interesting to do that. But again, it would need to be a day off of work, a day where I have nothing else planned, where I can just sit and watch it. Hating taxes is a red versus blue reference. Okay, I never watched. I've watched like 2 episodes of that. I haven't watched much of it. So I would never get that. Is it because my fingers are short? That's why I'm always late in typing. I feel lost. I don't think it's because your fingers are short. I have a doubt. I doubt that's the reason. There's just I forget that there's a delay. So like when I say something, I'm like, why isn't everyone instantly responding? It's because you guys are like a minute behind me. I say something and you guys respond a minute later to something I said, and I forget that. Like it's just so funny to me. I see you guys respond to something that I said a minute ago, and I'm like, why? That's a delay, but it's because it's not. It's a live stream, but it's delayed by a minute. So I don't think it's your fingers. I just think it's the live stream itself. The Message, 1976, 3-hour long movie. Wait, so what you want me to react to a 3-hour long movie? Wait, is that what you're saying? Because maybe one day I could watch a full length movie and give a reaction to it. The only thing is I wouldn't be able to show the movie on the video, probably because copyright reasons. I'm not sure if they would bust me for that. I don't know. I just avoid doing. I avoid movies at all costs just because of copyright reasons. Like it's just a pain to try to deal with that. Count me in as long as YouTube remember to notify me in time, not after hours. The problem that's partially my fault too, is because I don't always schedule live streams out ahead of time far enough for people to get notified, and that's because of my work schedule. Like I schedule things as I have time, and sometimes I only have time at the end of the day. Sometimes I have time beginning of the day. Yeah, I'm trying to stay on top of things, but yeah, that's partially my fault. But I will try. If I do a long live stream, trust me, if I'm planning a 3-hour live stream, I'm going to notify you guys like a week ahead. I'm going to be like, I'm doing this. Be present. so be assured, if I ever do a long live stream, I will notify you guys and I will make you know. And if I do a long live stream, I might invite a friend over or something and do it alongside them and have a buddy discussion, because it would be kind of I enjoy talking to you guys, but it would be fun to have someone in the flesh with me. So maybe I have a few YouTube buddies. I'm in a group chat. I might be able to convince them to do like a long live stream with me sometime. We'll see. You know what? You gave me an idea, Flower. I think I'll see if I can get a buddy of mine to do a video with me, and I think we might be able to do something. We'll see. Don't hold me to it, but I'll see what I can do. I want to talk to a buddy of mine. Let's see if we can do something. You said you want to live stream 3 hours. Someone uploaded on YouTube a story of Prophet Muhammad. Oh, okay. Okay, interesting. I mean, I one day I could do a 3-hour live stream, but we'll see. So it's a movie on YouTube, presumably copyright free. Then I'm assuming I would have to. I test these things out a little bit ahead of time. Sometimes I get them wrong, but yeah. So that would be interesting to watch a movie like that. I've also some people in the comments have told me to watch some documentaries and things like that. We'll see. But yeah, if I do a long live stream like that, I will let you people know. I will let you people know ahead of time. As I said, I might talk to some buddies of mine, see if I can get something to happen. But we'll see. February's going to be a bit crazy. February, I already have 2 collaborations planned for February with a couple different people. I have, what else did I have planned this month? This month also I have a couple other videos planned out. And then, yeah. So this month is going to be a bit crazy, I think, but we'll see. We'll see what I can do. Maybe I'll plan for a live stream at the end, a long live stream, end of this month, maybe March. We'll see. Okay, it's been about an hour. I think I should head out and do some video editing, because I have a video that I'm trying to release this Saturday, and I won't be around much Saturday. So yeah, all right. So I think I'm gonna head out, guys. Thank you for the great video, the great chatting, the great discussions, all that stuff. Love you guys. Hopefully see you in another live stream. And as always, friends, go out there and light the world yourselves.